So the big tax question is this: how do wealthy people keep their money working for them when selling their business, real estate, or other highly appreciated assets without paying hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in tax? What if we, as business and real estate owners who have poured blood, sweat, and tears to growing our wealth, and who didn't hire expensive tax attorneys and CPAs to map out an exit strategy, knew their secrets? Instead of recreating the wheel, why can't we just model the way they deferred 30 to 50% in tax, paid off debt, funded their next business dream, and most importantly, leave a financial legacy to give to the causes we believe in most? What if their secrets weren't complicated at all, and you just need a guide who is a few steps ahead of you? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Brett Swarts, and welcome to Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way for you to grow your wealth. Hey, I'm your host, Brett Swarts. In each episode, I'm joined by some of the best financial independence and passive income wealth advisors in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration, so together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. Hey, but sometimes before you do all of those things, you need a way to grow your business in a healthy way through executive coaches who do this for a living, right? And that's growing your teams, that's growing your profits, that's growing yourself as an individual. And when you do those things collectively, your business naturally will grow in the revenue. And then when you do that, you can actually have an exit event where you have this big capital gains tax, which you can then defer, right? So with that, I'm excited to bring on our next guest. He is the founder for Path for Growth. He's also the former host of the #1 business podcast in America, Entree Leadership. He's also a former Entree Leadership coach with Ramsey Solutions, and he's going to talk about his journey to his new company right now, and he's going to share with us a bunch of wisdom. So get ready to dig in here with Alex Judd. Hey, Alex, welcome to the show.
Brett, thanks so much for having me on. I'm pumped about this, man.
Hey, so there's two things I really like about you, Alex. One, you're from the great state of Texas. Two, you're about business and growth. And then, I guess the third one would be now you're in Tennessee, right? Which is also a beautiful place for music and for everything. I think a lot of Californians are heading that way due to the high capital gains taxes. So if you had to choose between Tennessee and Texas, Alex, what do you choose and why?
Man, that is an incredibly difficult question. That's a pretty relevant question for me right now too. Here's my thought. I grew up in Texas, and one of the things that I learned is that you don't realize how much you love Texas until you leave Texas, and then you realize how special a place it is. My thought is that eventually the state of Texas will eventually absorb the entire eastern side of the United States. So I don't think I'm going to have to move from Tennessee. I think Texas is just going to kind of incorporate Tennessee eventually.
It does have that kind of reach. I can see that for sure. As a California person, we love the state of Texas. My wife watches the Joanna Gaines, and I forgot his name, but Chip is his name. And she's like, when we move to Texas, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I know people in Texas, but we got all our families in California. But we're actually going to be visiting Dallas coming up here in August. I'm excited for that. But that being said, enough about all that stuff. Let's dive into a little about you, Alex. So tell us a little bit about your story and your current focus.
Yeah, a little bit of my story. I've been passionate about two things: effective communication and leadership for almost as long as I can remember. Like literally, I remember in second grade, my mom was folding laundry and I looked at her, and she remembers this too. And I told her, I don't think I want to be a motivational speaker one day, but I think it would be really cool to be a motivational teacher. And it's like, excuse me? Like, who says that? Like, where does that come from? But I think I had this thing in me that I always respected and admired effective communication. And then moving forward out of that, I started to realize that the thing I enjoyed communicating about the most was this topic of leadership, because I absolutely believe, because I've seen it happen whenever it works right, and I've seen the consequences of it's not going this way, that everybody wins when a leader decides to intentionally grow every single day. I believe that at the core of my being. And that was something that I took with me into college. And then outside of college, I ended up working for this leadership development group in Austin that was associated with the church that I was going to. And as a member of that, and in supporting and building that, and also in helping a friend of mine build a startup, I started listening to, you already talked about it, I started listening to the Entree Leadership podcast every single Monday and just love that podcast. Still do. It is like, they just do such a good job at Ramsey Solutions of bringing content that is both inspirational, but also hyper practical and just makes you feel equipped and able. And so I was listening to it as a consumer, and literally I remember where I was standing. I was on a run and I had hit a crosswalk where there was a red light. And I remember where I was standing when I thought to myself, man, Dave Ramsey's company, that would be a cool place to work one day. And I always tell people 14 interviews later, I ended up working there and started in more of a sales oriented role and then stepped into a coaching role and then eventually got to step in as host of the podcast. And it's just recently, like literally within the past month, I've stepped out to now start my own business and just kind of had this realization. I think I would spend my entire life wondering what would have happened if I didn't start my own business and give it a shot. And that business is called Path for Growth. And I'm just so pumped with everything that's already going on with that, but also the plans that our team has for the future.
Amazing. An amazing story of a journey of an entrepreneur, right? And as a business owner now of yourself, and then helping all the business owners. And we're going to jump into that, some of those practical things here in a minute. But I'm curious, Alex, we mentioned Texas growing up. I also think about when I was growing up, and I think most of friends and family, I think we all, in fact, are given certain gifts in this life. I believe God-given gifts that are used to bless others, right? And you mentioned that quick story about you wanting to be a teacher of motivation, but beyond all that, what is the gift, Alex, that you believe you were given, and connect how that helps how you help people today?
My personal mission statement is to glorify God by using the gifts he's given me. And whenever I say gifts he's given me, what I always think in my head is, in parentheses, effective communication and leadership to inspire understanding, action, purpose, and faith in others. And so I say that to myself every morning. That's why I get out of bed every morning, is because I am on that mission. That's what makes it all worth it. And so when you ask the question about what are the gifts, like, I am just deeply, deeply passionate, not about talking. I'm passionate about communicating, because we've all heard that line, right? An educator takes the simple and makes it complex. A communicator takes the complex and makes it simple. And I just see so often, and it just drives me so freaking crazy, how people feel unequipped and unable to start or grow their business because some person that thinks they're too smart for everyone takes the simple and they make it complex, and they put all these $10 words on it, and they use all this jargon, and they make you feel like you need to have a PhD just to understand how to build a business. And I like saying, like, we don't have to use all the jargon. We don't have to have a PhD. The price of admission to starting a business is grit, hustle, and resiliency. That's what you need. And if you've got that, then I believe, to use Marie Forleo's line, everything is figure outable. And it's going to be bumpy. We're going to fail. We're going to mess up, but we're going to figure it out. And so that's one of the things that I'm hyper passionate about, is communication. But then I think the second thing is leadership. And I think it was just one of those things, like in the cul-de-sac growing up, like, I'd say it's God-given because I didn't do anything to earn this, right? And like, my parents look at and they're like, where did this come from? We don't really know. Like, I would get like massive groups of people rallied around projects or games or tasks in the cul-de-sac. And it's like, it was just this thing that it was just what I did, right? And it's totally a gift from God, and it's a gift that I'm trying to utilize now in this current season, just to say, let's cast a compelling vision. Let's marshal the necessary resources, and then let's get all the right people on the bus to go on that ride together.
Absolutely love it. So the grit, hustle, and resilience, I think of the 80-20 part of it where, Mr. Dave Ramsey says it's 80% emotional, right, and behavioral and
Yeah.
20% head knowledge. And I think the same would apply. Would you agree that, a lot of this business in building the 80% of the grit, hustle, and resilience, that's the 80% of that emotional type of thing. And then the 20% is how to build a business and the tactics and the strategies, right? But walk us through just, the moment you realize that, and or be what's the biggest misconception between the two?
I love that question. Whenever I arrived at Entree Leadership, so Entree Leadership exists to help the small business owner win, right? That's why Entree Leadership exists as a part of Dave Ramsey's company. And I had this misconception in my head 4 years ago, whenever I arrived at Entree Leadership, that I saw that there was a gap between the people who fail whenever it comes at working on the business and people that succeed. And whenever I came in, I saw that gap. That gap was so clear. There's a difference between people that fail and people that succeed. And I thought that the difference between those that fail and those that succeed was information. I thought that these people just had the right information and these people didn't. And it took about 6 months of observation for me to realize that the gap between the people that fail whenever it comes to working on the business and those that succeed has nothing to do with information. We live in the age of information. You can find everything you need on your bookshelf. If you can't find it on your bookshelf, there's this thing called Google that has every answer you need, right? So the difference between like those that fail and those that succeed, it wasn't having the right information. The difference was that the people that were succeeding whenever it came to moving their business forward and actually enjoying doing it, it was those people had, number one, a clear vision for where they were going. And number two, they had a plan for consistently executing on the things that matter most over an extended period of time. And what I've learned is that so often myself, but also the leaders that I coincide with every day now, so often we suck at creating a plan for consistently executing on the things that matter most over an extended period of time. But what's crazy is we all want it. We all want that plan to follow. And that's why I created Path for Growth, is because I'm sharing from what I've learned working with some of our nation's top leaders on the Entree Leadership podcast, working for Dave Ramsey, and now building my own business. I'm saying, what is the path that we can follow to create that plan?
Is so well said, and so I think applicable, especially for myself and the business owners and entrepreneurs that I serve. And I get the sense that folks, we know that, right? And then we set out on a plan. And I think the key word you said there was consistently executing, right? And then there's the part of, okay, we got to delegate, we got to hire the team members, we got to empower them, we got to get out of the way. And then either you forget or you get back into old habits and you start to take control again. So there's always these two big challenges: control and delegation, right? And they're always kind of, one and the other. And there's also this sense of fear and trust and those are the other two. Fear, fear is on the control side, and on the delegation side, it's trust. And so walk us through, I guess, that connection there, right? And then connect the consistency part of the plan.
I love that question. It was about 2 weeks into starting this business. I'm very, very grateful that we launched with some one-on-one slots just for one-on-one Path for Growth coaching. And what was crazy is I just put out an informal LinkedIn and Instagram post saying, hey, the formal launch is coming up, but we're going to open a couple of one-on-one slots. And what was crazy is within the first 2 weeks of that informal post, all of those slots were filled. And I was like, holy cow, this thing's going to work. And I was really, really stoked about this, right? I was so pumped because I love working one-on-one with people and I love the difference that can make in the life of a leader and by extension, their team. But I was also simultaneously really bummed because I had this vision for what I was referring to and still am referring to as growth groups. And I said, man, how cool would it be? Kind of like the mastermind format, but really hyper intentional, right? We don't want to create a kumbaya circle. I want to create a monthly 2 meetings a month where 6 people get in a room and they know that the people they're in the room with are smarter than themselves. And they know that in certain areas. And that creates this, just this incredible space for great discussion, great action, great accountability, and great support. And I think I knew that was a need in the marketplace. And I said, I just really want to create that. But I was bummed because I was like, I don't think I'm going to have enough time because of how fast the one-on-ones filled up. And I sat there and I thought, okay, well, we could punt this thing 6 months. Or what if I hired someone, and what if I delegated that? And that idea, it's fear, the word fear that you used, it's exactly what I felt in that moment. I felt a lot of fear because I was like, man, this is still my baby, and this is my 2-week-old baby, and I'm already talking about delegating this thing. But then I thought to myself, okay, well, what would have to be true? And this is this is a question that is so crucial for entrepreneurs to ask themselves. Not, can we do that or can we not? That is a poorly formed question. It's not, can we do that or can we not? It's what would have to be true for us to do that successfully? Because that is a question that is rooted in belief and purpose. And so I sat back and I said, well, for me to do growth groups successfully here today where I'm not doing it, what would have to be true? And I just thought to myself, well, I would have to find someone that I deeply trust to run them. I would have to make sure that person can't be someone that I hired that's a stranger, because I'm not going to be able to build a relationship with them fast enough to really, really feel good about it. It needs to be someone that's really, really connected to the way that I like to think about business and leadership, and the way Path for Growth is going to be teaching business and leadership. And it needs to be someone that is just absolutely world-class at working with people. So I listed all those things, and I thought to myself, man, there's this entrepreneur that I know. She's one of the most high caliber leaders I've ever met and ever gotten to work with. And I was like, I have dinner with her and her husband every Wednesday night, and we talk about business and leadership, and every Wednesday night I get better. And I thought to myself, well, what if I delegated this to her? And so all that to say, the reason why I think this connects to your question is we operate in fear when we think about the unknown, right? And whenever I was thinking about growth groups in the hands of some random stranger, right, it was super scary, and there was no way I was delegating it. But the minute I put pen to paper and said, what must be true to delegate this? Well, the next step became a lot more clear. And I'll tell you what, her name's Olivia, and she's now our leader of growth groups, and she's building it. She's filled up her first group already. That was just a week ago. And she's absolutely crushing it. And it's just been so encouraging for me to realize you can let go of responsibility. And if you create the framework for great work to occur, it can go well. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I think of it like, you're going to plant a tree, or you're going to plant corn or whatever. You got to lay the groundwork. You got to get it all in order. You got to have the plan, and then you got to have the farmer to come in and start to make this thing grow and to water it. And by the way, you're right. We only have so much time and energy during the day. If we want to scale, we're going to have to learn how to do this really well. So you said we operate in fear when we operate in the unknown, right? I think that's natural, right? As humans, if we don't understand something, or something is unclear, or if it's brand new to us, our natural instinct is to have fear, to have reservation, right? It protects us, right? That's the way we're wired. But as soon as you can get the cloud out of the way, out of the fog out of the way, and get some clarity, right? Because the solution's on the other side of that. I mean, you can kind of see the solution, but you just can't quite know how to get there. So walk us through taking that cloud and that fog away. What's maybe the one or two, practical steps that a business owner or a high net worth individual listening to this podcast can do right now?
I love that question. I just got off a call right before this conversation, Brett, where the guy was a hyper visionary leader. He was a hyper high performer. His team is absolutely crushing it right now. And he's exceeded the biggest revenue goal that he had, which is just awesome. It's killer. And so he's at this point now where he's got these super ambiguous dreams of where he wants to be in the future. He's got his long-term dream of what he wants his life to look like at the end of his life. And then he knows this is what we have to do right now. And everything in between what we have to do right now for the next 90 days and the future is operating in that realm of the unknown. And so he's really struggled because he's being hyper intentional, right? One of the phrases we always talk about, working on the business versus working in the business. He's being really intentional about carving out time to work on the business. But whenever he's doing it, he's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing because I don't necessarily have a crystal clear idea of what I'm driving towards. And I think that's so important for high performers, high net worth individuals to understand. This was something that I learned from Henry Cloud. Is he says that the hallmark of an effective individual and an effective leader is that they will produce more than they can sustain, without a shadow of a doubt. And so often we look at our inability to sustain what we have produced as a weakness. And really, that's just a sign that you've been effective. Congratulations, right? You did it. You produced more than you can sustain. Now, you're going to have to figure out how to systemize that or operationalize that or delegate that or automate it, or some of the stuff you're going to need to prune and delete. But we will produce more than we can sustain. And that's why it's so crucial. The high performer and the leader will not get off track because of a lack of opportunity, but rather because of an abundance of it. The high performer or the leader will get off track because of an abundance of opportunity that will distract them from the vision that they're chasing. And the only way you stay on course is if you've got a clear idea of where you're actually going. And I'd be interested to hear from you, the people that you work with all the time. A lot of times people never actually ask that question, where are we actually going, and put pen to paper to answer it.
Absolutely. And or it just shifts and it changes and it adapts, right? And like COVID-19 hits and you're going, okay, so I had this thought and I had this plan and now everything's flipped upside down. And so now I've got to shift, adapt, and start all over, right? Or whatnot. So yes, it's needed more than ever, I think, clarity, right? And it's
But
needed
that's the thing. That's the thing that's so crucial here, Brett. And I'm sorry to cut you off. I just think that this is so crucial. When we have a vision of where we're going long-term, like 5 years, 10 years from now, when we have that vision and then a global pandemic that we could have never planned for happens in the present, it doesn't mean that we shift the vision. It means that we shift the strategy, right? We have to absolutely pivot and change and modify and adapt how we're going to get to where we're going 10 years from now. But man, what is the line? Vision is immovable. Strategy is up for grabs.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, shift the strategy, not the vision, right? Because your conviction of where you're going, it's correct. It's there. Continue to believe in that. But let's shift the strategy. I'm reading a book right now, and it talks about this process of 5 things, right? You set goals, but then you're going to have problems. But when you have those problems, the next step is to diagnose what happened, right? What went wrong? What could we have done differently? And the next step is to design the next part of the strategy, right? You're going to shift the strategy. And then you're going to go just do that, right? And so it's this constant motion of this, you're climbing upwards to the right, and then you're dropping back down a little bit, then you're climbing a little bit higher. But you're constantly growing, but you are shifting. And the key is defining what is the problem, what is the challenge, what is holding us back, where do we go wrong, right? And then diagnose, what can we have done differently, and then what can we do differently moving forward, and then you just go ahead and just do that, and now execute that new strategy. So talk about, especially COVID-19 now, establishing a new strategy, right? What are some things that you're seeing the best leaders do right now to be innovative in changing their strategy?
I think it's so fascinating. Different businesses are being affected in different ways, obviously, and different businesses are being affected at different times, right? So I work with a lot of businesses right now that are in hospitality industry, or maybe they own a gym or something like that. And it's like they caught the blunt force trauma of this the minute it rolled out, right? Because they had never planned for a zero revenue day, and suddenly they had several zero revenue days. And it's like, holy cow, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, and America just got collectively punched in the face, right? Or the world got collectively punched in the face. But then there's other businesses that it's crazy because maybe they've even experienced an increase. Businesses that their primary work is done in the outdoors, lots of construction, lots of landscaping companies, lots of pet-oriented companies. It's crazy. They've all seen a spike. It's just wild. And it's like, I think everyone's realizing like, oh, my dog has a limp. I think I should probably take him to the vet. It's like, yeah, probably. But So different businesses and different industries are experiencing this in different ways. And so it's a little hard to prescribe. You want to know a little bit about a person's situation. Here's where I think most people are at right now. Most people are at a stage where their teams, and certainly for themselves as a leader, are a little bit experiencing the PTSD of everything we've been through for the past 2 months. And it's just like blunt force trauma. Holy cow, what just happened? We could have never expected that. Like, this was not in our 2020 annual plan. It looked nothing like this. And I think the mistake would be for us to say, we just need to make it through to 2020 and then we'll plan 2021. That is, this is not the time for autopilot, right? This is not the time to abandon your leadership card and say, we're just going to ride this year out and then we'll hit the accelerator whenever we hit 2021. Now more than ever, your teams, your community is starving and craving clear vision. And so when you have your feet under you and you can see how your industry is being affected and you feel like you have enough information with regard to what the next month or two is going to look like, it's time to sit down and say, okay, between now and the end of the year, we get to December 31st, right? We get to New Year's Eve. What does winning look like on December 31st? Well, winning number one, first bullet point is probably that our whole team is intact, right? And that we all still like each other. That's probably pretty good. And then maybe we've got some revenue goals. And then maybe we've thought a little bit about like how we've pivoted and we've got some other supply lines or some other products that are going to diversify so we don't have to go through this again. Maybe number 4 is that we've brought revenue back up to where we were previously. And what we list about where we want to be December 31st, those are outcome oriented. They are not the actions that are going to get us there. Because whenever we list the outcomes of where we want to be, it's amazing how you equip the people on your team to say, well, I think I could do something to help out with that one. And I think I can fill in some of the holes on this one. Or it's a powerful day when people start to ask the question, what if? What if we did this to get there on December 31st? That is why I'm so passionate about leadership, because leadership steps into a turbulent time, into a crisis situation, and just says, what would winning look like? And then what would have to be true to get there?
Wow, that's worth a book in itself right there that you could certainly write tomorrow, Alex. That's so much wisdom there. Now let's dive into your business. I'm curious, what does that look like for, founder of Path for Growth? What is Path for Growth? Walk us through some of those visions for equipping individuals who might be saying, you know what, Alex, I think I need or want executive coaching, mastermind groups, a place to grow and to with folks who are a step or two ahead of me, right, or a little bit smarter than me in this area. What does that look like for an entrepreneur or business owner who's listening to this podcast right now?
Yeah, it's so much of what we've already talked about today. Similar to you, I love Donald Miller, and he talks about you need to figure out the problem that your customer is trying to solve. What I see is that impact-driven leaders often fail because they lack clarity of vision, or exactly what we said earlier, or a plan for consistently executing on the things that matter most over an extended period of time. And so Path for Growth exists to provide people with that through kind of 3 avenues. We do one-on-one and group coaching. We do intensives, which are kind of roll up your sleeves and I'm going to come to your office, or we're going to do it virtually. I did a 7-hour intensive the other day where we did a 7-hour Zoom call. And what's crazy is by the time we finished, that person had the next 3 years of their business strategically planned out. It was awesome. And we did it with their executive team. It's so cool. So one-on-one and group coaching, intensives, and then we also do speaking and teaching and team training as well. And so people can get all the information about that on the website. And if they want to sign up for a consultation call with me, I just started the company. So if you sign up for a consultation call, I'm your guy. So I'd love to have a phone call with you. But that's where we're at right now, Brett.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That's pathforgrowth.com. And we're going to throw a little curveball at you here. I know we say we're not going to talk about wealth, but I am just curious. Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, people have an exit plan at some point, selling a business or real estate after they've done all these things to add, again, tremendous value to their team and to their customers. They drive these revenues, and then they go to sell, Alex, Now what? What have you found that what the biggest mistake that business owners make? Be it they're not thinking about the plan, they're not clarifying their vision for their retirement or their exit plan, or even the capital gains tax that's associated with it, right? Somewhere between 30 and 50% of the gain, depending on what state you live in and how much depreciation or recapture you've taken, is going to be wiped out. So let's say you build a company to $10 million and has a zero basis. That's $4 million in tax or so at 40%. So what is your experience, if all, or what is your advice for anybody who's facing an exit of their business as it pertains to capital gains tax?
I love that question. A great mentor of mine, his name is Brian Miles. He's the founder of a company called Belay that they provide virtual assistants for people around the country. They've got over 1,000 virtual assistants now. He also owns a brewery now, and now they're also starting a platform called Own Not Run. And one of the greatest lessons that he's taught me is he said, Alex, you do not build your business as a lifestyle business. You do not build your business as a hobby. You build your business as an asset. And the thing that you need to understand about an asset is that an asset, not necessarily that you will sell it, but an asset can always be sold. And the reason why you build your business that way is because it's the right thing to do. That was really, really influential advice for me. And I think sometimes we get caught up, either it can be our own ego, it can even be really, really great aspirations for serving people exceptionally well, leveraging our personality, or it can just be that we love the work so much that we just want our personality to be so entwined in it. All good things, right? But that we hamstring the business because we are so intertwined with the business. And if you are at a stage where you want to move beyond your business one day, you want to sell your business one day, or you want to have someone succeed you in the business one day, or you want to transition the business to someone someday, build your business as an asset. And then make sure you talk to Brett, because he's going to help you deal with the whole capital gains tax mess of getting out of it and making sure that you don't give Uncle Sam more than he deserves, right? But I think that was just so crucial for me. And quite frankly, that's why this is not called Alex Judd Incorporated, right? Because I want to build an asset, and an asset is what I view as path for growth, because I can sell a path for growth. Not because I'm going to, I may never sell it because I love this too much right now. There's no way you could offer me any amount of money and I would never sell it right now, but because I think it's the right thing to do for the future.
Hey, that makes perfect sense, right? It's an asset, and so it's like being a good steward of what you've been given, right? And so to be a good steward of what you've been given and what you're building, you should build it as an asset. So with the end in mind, you may or may not sell, but if you do, at least you built it in the right way. Hey, I love that answer, and thank you for that. That being said, are you ready for the lightning round, Alex?
Lightning round. I didn't know the lightning round was going to happen, but I'm ready. Yes.
Yeah, you ready as you're ever going to be. All right. So knowing what you know now, Alex, if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget you would tell yourself to do?
Well, 25-year-old was 3 years ago. I would tell 25-year-old Alex, stop caring about what people think so much and just focus on doing the next right thing.
Love that. What is the one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
The Second Mountain by David Brooks.
Why?
Man, that book, I measure the effectiveness of books based on how they impact the way that I act day in and day out. That book is entirely about this idea that we all go on this first mountain journey where we're trying to build our resume, we're trying to build our influence, we're trying to build our wealth. These are all really good things, but if they become the main thing, it's a really, really bad thing. And so inevitably, either by our own doing or by the doing of the world, we get plunged off that first mountain into this valley. And it's there that we either have this choice. We can stay in the valley, we can reclimb the first mountain, just a different version of it, or we can make this journey to the second mountain. And David says that the second mountain is less of a journey upward and more of a journey inward. And it is characterized by a series of powerful commitments about the type of person that we want to be for the world around us. That book changed my life, Brett.
I think that last 30 seconds just changed my life. So thank you for sharing that, Alex. Yeah. I've got to get that book. Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
A digital or mobile resource that I recommend for my business. Man, this is hard because I just started my business. Let me think. And quite frankly, tech is not where I'm most proficient. Honestly, I don't know that it's a digital resource, but I've experienced it entirely virtually. Belay is my friend Brian. It's his company. They have virtual assistants, and I'm getting on-ramped right now. I'm getting onboarded with one of their virtual assistants. I have just been absolutely blown away with what you can accomplish virtually with someone assisting you. And like, I have been able to increase the impact of Path for Growth in the first 4 weeks because of what they've been able to do virtually.
Love that. Belay. I think it's Belay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Excellent. Favorite leadership quote or theme that you try to live by? It's a tough one for Alex here because he was the former host of the Entree Leadership podcast, so he's got a lot of leadership quotes.
Yeah, I think honestly the one that stands out, just because we just talked about it, is from David Brooks. It's the way that he defines commitment. And he says that commitment is when we fall in love with something so much that we put structure and system around it for the moments when we no longer feel in love with it. And I think that applies to business. I think that applies, I'm not married, but I assume that applies to marriage. I know that it applies to friendships. I know that it applies to vocation. Again, commitment is when we fall in love with something so much that we put structure and system around it for the moments when we no longer feel in love with it.
Yeah, that's worth the whole podcast right there, everybody. It reminds me of a quote that that I try to live by, and it's integrity is never owned. It's only rented, and the rent is due every day, right? And I think it's Rory Vaden. I think Rory got it from another leadership person that mentored him. But I get the idea that, yeah, commitment or commitment to your business or to the values, like, it's never owned. Like, they're due every single day. So what are you doing to put the systems, the resources, the coaches, the masterminds, the accountability? What are you doing to keep those things going for what your heart was at, where it was at when you first started, right? Rather than, yeah, we all fall out of the emotional high of certain things, right? And so I love that. I love that quote. I'm going to write that one down too. Okay, so next question. Alex, what are you curious about right now?
What am I curious about right now? Man, it's actually more of an introspective thing right now. What I'm curious about is the effect of emotional intelligence on highly impactful leaders. So one of the things that I've recognized is the more emotionally intelligent I've become, because I've done work on it with a counselor and with myself, the harder leadership becomes, because it's like suddenly you become more aware of these things that are going on internally, but also in realizing what's going on externally with people. And it's just like, man, the more I realize, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. And so I'd just be interested to know, and one of the things that I'm really curious about right now is for those people that I look at that are just like hallmarks of effectiveness, but also being emotionally intelligent and being very, very aware of their own emotions and the emotions of others. How do they walk that balance, and how do they make sure they're not sacrificing effectiveness because they're drowning in emotions, but also aware of emotions so that they don't sacrifice effectiveness?
Absolutely. I think about Henry Cloud, and like every time I hear him talk, I read one of his books, I'm just like, man, the amount of wisdom, the amount of EQ, and the amount of just like how he connects it and makes it so clear and simple. I'm like, his gift, right? I mean, talk about gifts. Love Henry Cloud. Great. Last question, and then we'll talk about folks where they can find you. So after all your success, Alex, after your journey, from Entree Leadership, from Ramsey Solutions to Path for Growth, all the amazing people you've been able to interview, all of your success, right? You're the mountain that you climbed, right? To 28 years old now, let's call it that, right? How do you stay centered in your values? And then second, how do you stay encouraged to charge forward to reach new goals or that second mountain?
How do I stay centered in my values? I say them every morning. I have 5 core values and I say them every single morning. It's I will relentlessly do the right thing. I will take ground every day. I will communicate and lead for God's purposes, not my own. I will honor and respect authority, and I will love intentionally and actively. The way I stay centered on those is I say them every single morning when I wake up. And then I try my best to apply myself to exemplifying them with my life. And then the second question was, how do I make sure I'm continuously moving forward? I think one of the things that I've learned, and on the personal growth side, this is kind of a founding principle for Path for Growth. One of the other things that I'm really passionate about is when people grow personally, their leadership expands as well, especially if it's done for the right reasons, is moving forward every single day. Lots of people think it's about discipline. It's not about discipline. It's about habits. Discipline gets you started. Habits keep you going. Yes, you need discipline and willpower and grit and resiliency to start something. But after a while, you should establish those things as a habit, and then you apply yourself to the right systems and routines and rhythms to make sure that you get the result you're actually looking for.
Love that. And you can find out how to actually apply everything we've been talking about by going to Path for Growth and signing up for some coaching with Alex. Alex, with that being said, besides pathforgrowth.com, where else can folks find you?
Yeah, Path for Growth is on all social media accounts. If you want to follow us there, again, that's me running it. So it's a lot like following me on social media. I'm Chief Everything Officer right now. And then you can follow me on social media at Judd on the Run. It sounds a little bit like I'm a convict on the run, but I'm not. I just like running a lot. And so that's why it's at Judd on the Run.
Excellent. Well, Alex, I want to thank you for being on the show, sharing your ideas, stories, inspiration, wisdom. I want to encourage you to keep using the gifts you've been given to bless others and to help people achieve everything they were created to be. So with that, I also want to thank our listeners for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy is the best way for you to grow your wealth. But before you grow your wealth, grow yourself and grow your team, and look at Alex as a group to help you do that. And please share, rate, review, subscribe. And we so appreciate you being with us today, and wish you well. Bye now.
You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions with Brett Swarts. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it helpful. Visit capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.